All right, I want to talk about the release of ChatGPT-5. And I watched the entire initial launch, which was about an hour long presentation, so you don't have to. And I wanted to cover it because this way I can bring you what I thought was the most interesting information about it. And first and foremost, the thing that I found the most interesting, and I definitely want, that was my number one note. And it was funny because when I was tuning in to watch it, that was the first thing that was on my mind was like, oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost? And I'm actually really happy to say I thought it was going to be behind, the plus paywall that they have right now. But the top model, so GPT-5, is free for everyone, which I think is great. That's awesome. And especially when you compare that to, recently Grok 4 dropped, and, that was hidden behind the paywall. That one was $30 a month. Whereas this one, everyone can use it. And yes, it's kind of like some of the other models now, like Gemini 2.5. And what they have on that one is you can only use it so many times. So GPT-5 is going to be similar in that fashion, but a huge improvement over the model today where you can only get access to the top level models by paying them a monthly subscription. This is great, and that's the thing too, is even when I use it, if I'm using it for like research or something for a video, just having it to be able to be used once or twice a day fully covers everything that I need for it. So, if you're using it wisely, you probably shouldn't run up into too many problems with that restriction. And the other thing too is, even if you do get bounced off of the top program, it will still bounce you to something that it's basically the quick version, the mini version, but it will still be a much higher performance than any of the models that came before it. Basically in line with like the top models from the previous generation, but quicker response rate. So still very good, but not obviously their top model. And then what I will say about this is that actually makes me like OpenAI a little bit more, because especially when you're comparing and contrasting with Elon making, Grok pay to play basically for Grok 4, this, puts me back into being, OpenAI in my good graces. And don't get me wrong, I still think Sam Altman is a complete huckster. Every time I see him go on something, I get, the skin crawls, and I'm like, I can't, do not trust him any further than I could throw him. But being that, GPT-5 is going to be the top of the line model, or it is, looking at the benchmarks and all that kind of stuff, since it's the top of the line model, I think that's going to force everyone else to kind of fall in line with that as well, which I think is great, right? I think that's a really good thing. And in my opinion, it was mostly done because probably Gemini, it's been a step, half step behind Grok 4, but Gemini 2.5 Pro has been a really great performing model. And so you don't want to try and paywall and then, you have to use the older models, which are, if you're a free user, you have to use the older models, which are actually worse than Gemini 2.5. Well, then you're going to go over and use that there. And they would prefer, OpenAI would prefer have everyone using ChatGPT-5 especially. But essentially their large language model versus others. As you probably picked up already, I've kind of talked around it, but the second most interesting thing to me, and I think is most applicable to the largest amount of people, is that it is the most advanced model on the market now. It's essentially catapulted itself. It was kind of with 4 was in 03 and all the different models that they had. Those were kind of falling behind now with the new latest versions coming out. But this, the launch to 5 has made ChatGPT solidly the number one most advanced AI system again. So good for them. I used it a little bit already just kind of tweaking up, resume and that kind of stuff. And I was actually pretty impressed with it. I liked what it did. It really kind of compacted it, made it long enough for the point of the career that I'm in. But then, it just really did. It was really impressive for what it was able to do. So I've used it a little bit myself, but it does seem to be pretty impressive in some of the rigors that I put it through that I have used AI for in the past. So really cool. It's I'm sure you'll be happy to have your hands on it and see what it can do for yourself. The other thing that goes kind of hand in hand with that, which I've kind of made an allusion to here, is that all of these skills are all rolled into one model. So there's no more, when you go up to the top corner and you click on the ChatGPT and you'd normally have a drop down and it would have all the different models listed. That's super confusing, right? And the thing is, you want it to be able to determine inside of itself which is the best. If they have different models that they have to have, which one is the best to assign what you're doing to that. And especially in the actual interface bar where they have the different things that you can click into, you shouldn't have to select what, you can select what you're doing in that little bar. Like if you want to do deep research or you want it to think a little bit longer or whatever it is, you can have those things work with it. But yeah, you don't want to have to be self-selecting out of a bunch of different models, because that's confusing, and most people, the average user, isn't really going to understand what's going on with that. I don't even think they're actually going to interface with that bottom bar. So I think this is a much needed change. And the other thing that is actually really interesting with that, and this is where I'm going to kind of take a side of the news, the actual release, and just kind of my opinion on it and what it means for the future, is in my original AI video that I made that kind of covered everything with AGI, I think this is a huge hurdle that needs to be overtaken to get to AGI. And I think this is a huge step in that direction, because in my AGI video, what I basically say is that I think in order to get to what I would determine as AGI, or artificial general intelligence, or basically super intelligence, ASI as it's sometimes called, is you would have to have one model that's able to do everything. And in this, it tackles that problem in that not only is the model able to, it's a seamless interface, right, for you, but then it's able to do more things within it. It can create photos. It can do all these different things that you would normally, especially a few years ago, you would have to go into completely separate tools. Like you would have to actually go into something that would create pictures, a picture AI, to be able, or image generation AI, to be able to do that. Whereas now you can do it all just from ChatGPT-5. Coding, image generation, content creation, all these different things, they're all under one umbrella. And the thing with that is, that helps no matter how they parse it up, but it allows the model to do top-down thinking. And if you think about it in the terms of like a human, right? Like when you're thinking of how to do something, there may be different parts of your brain where it goes into to say, oh, okay, I'm going to do something artistic, or I'm using my fine motor skills, or whatever it is that a human is doing. This now models that in humans much more closely, and I think is a very important step in the pursuit of AGI, because I think the closer that you can have these systems mirror human thinking and human intelligence and human processes in the brain, well, then you're going to get a closer model of that, or reflection of that, in the system. So I think this is a huge thing that, again, I'm not putting it up at the top because I don't think it really is affecting people that much, because I think most people weren't really even interfacing with the different models and didn't understand, at least the average user, but I think is something that is vitally important as something behind the scenes that's going to have an effect on the next system, or how close we are to achieving AGI, which I think is very important, right? I think that's a huge milestone that everyone is going to be aware of when it happens. And then going back to the presentation, the next thing they covered that I think is important for at least some subset of people, I don't think it's the most popular thing, was they made ChatGPT Voice Mode free for everyone. And I think that's kind of cool. I haven't used it yet, right? Before it was just for the the plus users. I think it's an interesting use case, right? I think when Siri came out, right, and that was super popular, or the Android equivalent, like when those systems were out at the beginning, they were kind of popular. I saw people using them sometimes, but this is just, that it's ChatGPT version of that, right? OpenAI's version of that, which I think was interesting, right? How much it'll get used, I personally don't really like to talk to them, those LLMs or AI. I don't really care to talk to them too much, but again, I think that's more a reflection of how I use the systems. Again, there is a cap on it, right? But what they were saying is that even for free users, you have a couple hours of that, and why you would be using it for more than a couple hours, again, I think that's probably a little aggressive for the amount of use that you would be doing with it. But again, it is on the free version, you at least have the optionality to use it, which I think is great. And if it gives you something to talk to, and if that's the best way that you like interfacing with it, great. And the other thing too that is good about it, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is just accessibility in general, right? Because if there's someone who's blind, I think having ChatGPT Voice is a great option for them, where they can interface with it without having to have it read or voice to read back or that kind of a thing. So I think it's just a good thing to have in there just generally. Again, I don't know how much I'm going to use it because I just don't really care that much, and that's not how I foresee myself using it, but it is something good to have. And then in one of the more eyebrow-raising moves, and this is something that I have been talking about for a while with AI, OpenAI decided to include the fact that, oh, by the way, ChatGPT-5 is really good at medical work. And this is whenever I talk to people about AI, and every single person is in denial that, oh no, it's not coming for my job. I think this is a perfect example of how it's coming for everyone's jobs. And the way to think about it is, well, personally, I find it kind of hilarious, mostly because I'm not a doctor, right? This would be very troubling, actually, if I was. Because if I was, I would be deeply concerned. But the announcement in general just backs up my belief that AI models will be used to replace the highest margin white-collar jobs first. And guess what a doctor is? Add to that the massive amount of boomers getting ready to need constant medical support, and, well, would you look at that? ChatGPT is being perfectly positioned to replace all those expensive doctors. The model is you get ChatGPT in to do the actual doctor work, and then you basically have nurse practitioners, which are significantly cheaper, to interact with the patients and do all that work. Again, this is a huge red flag for, I think, anyone who is doing white-collar work. And I think it is coming from blue-collar as well, but it's going to displace the people who make the most money. Because imagine if OpenAI comes to your employer, if you're a doctor, and you go to the medical practice and you say, you know how you're paying all these doctors hundreds of thousands of dollars? Well, what if we also gave your patients the option to have a nurse practitioner assisted by ChatGPT doctor, and they would have to pay 1/5 the price. I mean, that doesn't seem like a bad deal. And as people are getting more pinched financially, and inflation just continues on and on and on, it's gonna be increasingly important to try and reduce costs as much as possible. And I think that will be evidently the place to, medical is going to be a huge portion of that, right? How insane prices have been going up and up and up for medical stuff. And, if this is able to circumvent a large portion of that, people are going to go this way 100% of the time. And again, I think doctors are just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a bunch of positions like that are just prime for disruption with large language models. And again, to me, I always find it funny because whoever you talk to, I talk to so many people about this, mostly just because I think it's a very interesting times that we're in, but just an interesting topic in general. And anytime you talk to someone, oh no, it'll never be able to replace me. And I think anyone who believes that is kind of out of touch, and I think they'll be surprised very soon, much sooner than later. And this is just the first foray into this field, and it will undoubtedly just continue evolving rapidly. And I think if you disagree with me, I think I will be proven out in very short order that this is the way things are going to be going. And then going off of that little foray back to the main presentation again, they also showed off a pretty impressive coding segment, although probably not very applicable to most people, again, watching this video. But it was pretty cool to see, and again, I think it folds into my one model that's able to do everything from the top down, moving us towards AGI, so I think that's very important. But yeah, they showed off some coding where they had it build out a little mini video game, and then they had, they gave basically a few different use cases of it, but it was pretty interesting and was something that, again, I thought was pretty cool. Not a coder myself, and again, I don't think it's going to be too practical for most people, except for, I will say, if you have, and this is one thing that I wish it was around like 10, 20 years ago, so that I could have, because I've had multiple ideas through the years where I'm like, oh, that would be cool, but then I'd have to pay someone to code and do the whole thing. And so I think this is an instance where it can allow people who have ideas to launch products, especially digital, apps or whatever. It will allow them to be able to basically be enabled to at least try those sorts of things, right? Because a lot of the problem with the old model before, having AI agents that can code for you is that it would just be so expensive to have someone who's able to code come in and help you out with a product. And so now this will basically, reduce the monetization you can basically use the model for free up to a certain point, right? You might have to pay for the plus for like a month or something, right? If you have a really big project that you're trying to put together, right? Because coding can get very token, as they call it, token, right? Basically, the outputs would be so long that you will probably need to pay for a paid version of it, like the GPT Plus. But at least that is significantly cheaper than what it would cost historically to have someone code for you. So again, I just wanted to cover all those things really quickly, give you a real quick rundown. Again, I found it very interesting. Some of the things in there are a little bit eyebrow raising, so we'll see how that kind of continues to evolve. But overall was very well received by me. Again, the biggest thing is GPT-5 is free for everyone, which I think is amazing. I'm very happy about that. And again, hopefully Grok will follow in suit as well, Grok 4. And other than that, thank you for watching so much. If you enjoy what I do here, I would appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel. It will really help out my channel with its growth. And other than that, if you have made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.